and some of the concerns, I'll mention the individual, mentioned that that they feel that you are the roadblock to custom enforcement, and that you actually facilitated the office from moving more of an enforcement role to a policy role. And reading the testimony also from Mr. Stowe, he had mentioned in his testimony that Custom has not hired over 72 textiles and apparel specialists that Congress has appropriated. If that, in fact, is true, then I would probably agree with the statement that you are the problem as far as not enforcing. Reading the GAO testimony, they talked about their previous findings, suggesting that the shift in mission contributes to a reduced focus and resource devoted to custom revenue functions, and they also have a lot of concerns. So I guess my question to you, Mr. Baldoon, is can you explain if in fact why you have not hired the custom officials to beef up the enforcement at the borders, and do you think Custom has dropped the ball on enforcement since you cannot state or give accurate numbers or at this point to the ranking member? And my third question is, later on we're hearing testimony from a former U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency individual who's going to speak, and he makes suggestions, and if you have a chance to read his testimony, do you agree with the recommendations of why that he's proposing for us?
First off, I would comment that it's unfortunate if I'm viewed personally as a barrier to our enforcement actions, but a couple of things I would point out. First, when we formed the Office of International Trade back in 2007 through the Safe Port Act process, for the first time we actually created an executive director for commercial targeting enforcement. The agency never had a specific office dedicated except to targeting in our enforcement action. So I think that should alleviate one point. Second, I think it's unfortunate that there is still continues, and it seems like I answer the question most every year, that we have not hired the personnel that was directed back in 2005. First, the $9 million that was provided was divided between Customs and Border Protection and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Second, the statistics simply just don't prove that out. I can point to, that's in my written testimony, in 2006, the import specialist position alone had 264 positions dedicated to textile enforcement. In 2008, 2 years later, under my leadership, 329 positions. I don't know where the misconception continues to go.
But you're saying the 72 textiles and apparel specialists have been hired?
They were hired, and I have actually testified on textile issues in the past and have consistently said they have been hired. I think the problem results, unfortunately, is the perception that we still haven't done enough with those positions. And while I'm here, I'm happy to continue to talk about what our enforcement actions have taken. I'd be happy to give you more statistics on what actions we have taken and what successes we have had. I don't want to diminish the fact that of the 329 positions we have for import specialists in our agency today, composes about 35% of all import specialists for all issues, dwarfing the amount of resources we dedicate to intellectual property rights, import safety, anti-dumping, and countervailing duty. Okay. Dwarfs the amount of resources we have.
My time's running out. So do you feel that your operation is more of enforcement or a policy?
I would say what we do is we have both. What I would strongly suggest is we have
more on enforcement or more on policy.
We have two separate divisions. One is dedicated solely to policy issues. One is dedicated solely to enforcement issues. We give them equal attention. We give considerable attention to our enforcement role. We have significantly stepped up the number of special operations we conduct on issues, the work we do with our sister agency, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, for criminal and civil investigative matters has significantly increased, not on just textiles, but all trade enforcement issues.
And do you believe, do you support the recommendations on the next panel from the former U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agencies? Do you support his recommendation?
Could you refresh my memory as to what that recommendation might be?
Actually, he makes several recommendations for improvement in textile verification teams, as well as recommendation for better enforcement of the classification and evaluations of imports. So I know my time has run out, but we'll have to run out for votes. So if you haven't seen his testimony, hopefully during the break you can look at it.
But certainly as a question for the record, be happy to come back with a more formalized answer if we're not able to get to it after the break.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have one last question.
Yes, sir.
If 40% of the duty tariffs coming into the U.S. is textiles, and we're only examining on the basis of value of only a fraction of those, and those that you are examining, we're seeing that 44% of them are undervalued from CAFTA. If 44% from the CAFTA agreement and only 44% of them are undervalued, how many millions, if not billions of dollars is the U.S. losing?
First off, I'd say most of the efforts we would take to evaluate those are targeted initiatives. So we have already gone through the process and said this is a high risk and we have high level of suspicion that this is fraudulent. We couldn't statistically extrapolate from that number to say that that's the magnitude of the universe. But we do have programs that can give you a statistical projection as to what those risks would be, and we do use those to help us improve our targeting for future actions.
My last comment would be for everyone that we don't fully examine, and I know that may be difficult, may cause us to hire more people. For everyone that doesn't, there is a family and there's a job out there that the Americans are losing every single day. If we're losing that much money in revenue, we're also losing even more of that in the quality of life in America for not having a job. So I hope that we can collectively work together, and I think obviously from the ranking member, I think we're on the same page as talking about there's a lot of money that's being lost, but more importantly, we're looking at lots of jobs in the U.S. So hopefully we can work together. I think that's the most important thing we could do is actually work together and pull the rope in the same direction.
Just ask them to identify a staff member who's staying.
Yes, and if you could just identify a staff member who's going to be staying for our next witnesses.
Joe Reese will be here, as well as members of our Congressional Affairs.
Perfect. That would be great. Well, at this time, we're going to be in recess to call the chair again, and we'll be back shortly after the votes are over. Thank you.